Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chesswise. Today we are going to look at the next topic, that is the position solving for improvement. We are doing these positions in order to focus on finding the moves and how to choose the moves and calculate the variations also. So this is the position with white to play. First, as usual, we will try to see the activity and king safety. We see that the white king is very safe. Rook on f7 attacks f1, but because the move is white's, white can take the rook also and if required move the rook away also. Black king is far more unsafe because of two factors. One, two pieces are directly attacking near the king. The rook is capable of attacking the f7 square, although it is slightly away from the black king. And the second factor is that the move is white's. So here mainly white is more active and he is having better king safety because the move is his, he is able to make a combination. So let's see the candidate moves. So when I look at this position, my first candidate moves would be check, queen g7 check. Okay. Second, rook takes f7. We note that queen e5 and queen f6 check are also there, but they don't work. Simply the queen is taken and next check is not possible. So whenever a piece is taken, but still if next check is possible, we should consider that. And another way is whenever we are playing a move and opponent's moves are limited, like he has only one reply or two replies to it, then we should go into those moves, whether the piece is going free or not. So here white started the calculation with the move qg7, then he realized rook into g7, then rook f8 check, and the rook on g7 interposes to g8, and after rook g8 kg8, black has an extra pawn on the queen side. Maybe the position is not losing, but black will soon get c5 and the king will start approaching the h pawn. So black's chances of winning will be higher over there. So qg7 is not correct. Next he looks at the move rook into f7. So after rook f7, it's forced to play queen f7. When we see that the back rank has become weak and this queen gets a new check. So after rook f7, queen f7, qd8 check, forcing the queen to go to g8. King had no place on g8 and g7. So qg8 where the queen is protected, and now we see the black squares are weak. King is on the black square, our queen is on the black square, and the g7 black square is also guarded by the pawn. So comes queen f6 check. And we see that the only move is queen g7, to which queen takes g7 and mates. So I am not playing the moves at first so that we develop how to imagine the position. We should set up these positions on the chessboard and try to develop our imagination. So white played rook f7, queen takes f7, qd8 check, forced qg8, if queen f8 then queen into f8 mates. Now comes queen f6 check, because the king has no place, so it suffers immediately. Queen g7 forced. hg also wins, but qg7 is directly checkmate and white wins. Let's look at the next position here. Again we see that white is very well placed when we talk about the activity towards the king side. So white's pieces are, most of them are aiming towards the king side. See, the knight attacks g7 and e7 squares, rook can reach till e8, bishop can attack the h7 square, and queen is able to immediately transfer to h6 and g5 squares. Queen is also open along the c5. Bishop on b2 is not doing much, it's obstructed by the own pawn, the pawn which is unable to move right now. But if we compare this whole thing with black's, what we see? Black queen is still inside, rook is eyeing the pawn on d4, which is very well protected. Same we can say about a3. So this rook on f4 is highly misplaced. Okay, bishop on b6 is attacking d4, so black is trying to put pressure on d4. And a8, bishop and knight, we can say these two are really somewhat well placed pieces, because bishop can eye till g2 and the knight is capable of moving and creating some attack on the king side, knight f6 or knight f4 in future. Right now f4 is guarded very well. Position is of course white to play. All positions are white to play. Main problem with black is his back rank is weak. Okay, and the accessible squares like rook on e8 is controlled by the queen. The sole defender is the queen in the position. Rest all the pieces are far away from the king. So if any pieces who can reach near the king, one is the queen and some lines the knight can reach on f6. Still g7 would be the main weakness apart from back rank. So what we see, if we want to attack g7, we have got the move queen g5. So as per our method, we will try to find the candidates. So which moves we have? Rook e8 check, knight e7 check, knight captures g7, knight h6 check, and queen g5 and queen h6. So these many candidate moves we should have a look at them. Okay, so we should have in our mind. So first idea is very simple. If we play rook e8, queen e8, queen g5, we are trying to mate him on the g7 square. There can be two problems. One, black can start giving check on e1, although their bishop f1 is possible. Secondly, the queen can simply defend the square g7 by queen f8, and black has also got the move g6. So too many variations, and after q g5 moves are not that way forced over there. So white should reject that line and keep it aside. Second, we have got the move knight e7, to which we see after knight e7, knight takes on e7, and again there is no direct check which is possible. Then white saw that queen on d8 is covering g5, mating threats are possible on g7 square. So q g5, see, very powerful move q g5. Only it threatens mate, it attacks the queen, it's trying to deflect the queen also. So q g5, very strong move, attacking the weakness on g7. What are the options for black? If there are too many options and the moves are not forced, we might reject that also. But after q g5, if g6 is played, bd8, back rank, defender is going, and rook e8 is mate. Okay, so the queen is getting destroyed. So one variation g6 after q g5, second queen f8, and we see queen g5 is outright blunder because of rook e8. So there are only two variations actually to q g5. Since I cannot take q g5, it's instant mate, so we will treat like two variations. We saw g6 doesn't work, so that leaves him with the only move q f8, and white entered this line because he saw that the black queen, which is the defender, has become overloaded now. q g5 already it's overloaded. It continues further, q g5, queen f8, and black is in serious trouble after white spotted the move r e8. So let's see here, queen g5 creating double attack. So I told you already, g6, then q d8, bd8, re8 checkmates. Any other move like queen f6 allows re8 direct mate. Threat on g7 can be only met by queen f8, to which white saw the very strong move re8. Now the point is, it's not just the queen is attacked, white is threatening queen g7 mate on the spot, and he is threatening one more thing. Let's see what it is. So black played the only move g6, making what we can say, moving the pawn on g7, which was attacked. And here white has many ways of winning. Simplest is he continues the attack on g7 and the f8 square. See, nh6 just fails to g7. We are unable to mate here. Knight f5 is mere repetition. We can get the queen. Okay. So that we could have got here also. After queen rook f8, king f8, queen h6 check. White plays the very strong move q h6. Now see, f8 is attacked. So rook f8 and queen f8 are mating threats. Now there is no defense whatsoever. So queen cannot take the queen. Gf loses to rook f8, queen f8, queen e8 or not queen e8. Still q g7 is mate. So here white won the game. Look at the next position here. Again, as I said, it's white to play. Here black looks very active, like white is also active. Both are active here. Both king safety is compromised. Black immediately threatens rook h3 checkmate, the bishop on g2 is pinned, two attacks on h3, and we make out that both were attacking each other's king and such a position has arrived. Black must have thought that his king is relatively safe over here, because what we see, queen c8 is nicely guarded, rook a6, ba6 check, that's the only other check, and if checks are not played, like qd5 is played, as I told you, rook h3 mates. So white has to act very fast and try to find a way to force things here. Of course, this position is slightly easy, as I told you, white has to force things, so finding the moves will not be that difficult. But if it's a game situation, as I told you, we have to look at this before black reaches this position and creates the threat. White must have calculated in the move rook a6. Let's do that. Rook a6, if king moves to b8, then queen d6 mates on the spot. First variation is very easy. So ba6 force, rook a6 check, ba6. Now bishop d5 is not possible because the queen is pinning the bishop. So only other check, queen d5 check. qc6 helps black to play bb7. So qd5 check. Now if bb7, then qb7 mates. So there are two more lines. After qd5 check, if king moves to a7, then queen a8 and checkmate. King cannot move to b6 because of the pawn. So rook a6, ba6, qd5 check, king b8 force, and this queen has to find a check. So queen comes from the dark square. See how everything happens on the dark squares. Queen d6 check, forcing king a7, and when queen goes to b6, and since the b7 pawn is not there, bishop on g2 guards the 8 square, and it's a checkmate. Let's play the move now. Rook a6, pawn takes a6, queen d5 check. If bb7, then qb7 check is mate. King a7, then queen a8 checkmate. Since king cannot move to b6, bishop is protecting the queen, king cannot take the queen even though the bishop is pinned. King b8 forced, then qd6 check, forcing the king to a7, and now qb6 mate, since king a8 is again guarded by the g2 bishop. So white won the game this way. Let's look at the next position here. Again white to play. This time white is indeed far more active than black. We see that the queen and the rook both are eyeing f7 and g7 squares. So first weakness is g7. Second, we see that all the three are attacking on the f7 square. Pieces are very close to the king, big pieces that too, and the king has no place to move. So serious king safety issues for black. For white, we can say the black queen is near the king, but because the bishop is on g2 and the king has got some space on h1 and black is not having second piece which is able to attack near the king, white king is relatively, we can say, far safer. It's slightly difficult to spot a combination instantly here, but lot of overloading is there. Like this e6 knight is one of the key defenders. It defends the g7 square and it defends the f8 square also. Right now f8 looks nicely protected because rook and king and knight, three are covering the supporting the f8 square. But if we see, whenever queen f7 check will be there, after king h8, f8 support will be reduced. So one of the main candidate moves should be queen f7 here, second rook g7, third qg7, and queen into e6 destroying the defender. So these candidates have to be there. Among slower candidates, there can be the rook f7 creating threat on f8. So if rook f8, rook takes f8, then queen e6 check. But rook f8, knight f8 is possible. And that too, rook f7 is not such a forced move. So white starts thinking in the move qg7. Now qg7, then knight g7. And then we do have only rook f8 check, to which rook takes f8, and rook g7 check also, just king g7. Nothing happens after qg7. Next, white looked at the move queen f7 check. After queen f7, king h8, queen into f8, rook f8. Rook f8 could have been made, but the knight is the defender. So here white got the idea. See, this is the main benefit of having the candidate moves. And now the next move, rook g7, which he had, normally one would just reject rook g7, knight g7, and then what we have? Only queen f7 check. But white saw further in that, because see, the moves are forced as I told you. So after rook g7 check, if king goes to h8, then we can just do rook g6. Okay, it's not just a check, see, it's a checkmate. Rook cannot be taken because queen is giving check, so only move knight g7 and qg7 checkmates. And see how nicely the overloading is used, because after rook g7, knight had to take on g7, so the overloaded knight on e6 is deflected, and now comes qf7 check, king h8, and the back rank becomes weak. So queen f7, king h8, and queen f8 mate, which must have come as shock to black after rook f8 checkmates. So these all end positions are very important. We must try to register them, these ideas in our mind, because when we take our pieces to the opponent's king side, which we are learning to do through our game study, and the end we have to find or solve positions like this to be able to execute them in our own games. Let's look at the last position here. This is quite complicated and messy position. We see lot of attack happening near the black king, that the black king has no place to move, and lot of white attackers, almost everybody is attacking near the black king. So let's get started by counting the attacks. We see on h7 there is one attack, rook, queen and the bishop all are riding the h6 square. Knight attacks g7, which is defender of h6. The main problem here is white has to be very careful of not allowing this rook to come as a defense on the rank. So white's candidate moves are very obvious. qh7 check, bishop into h6, knight into g7, rook into h6. So these all moves have to be the candidates. And white started with the forced move first and used these second moves later. So white started his thinking with the move qh7. See, this helped him solve the answer very quickly. If he is using other moves which are less forced, then eventually see the moves are same, but the forced one, if we see first, the chances of executing and getting the answer quickly is more. So qh7 check, king h7, and now we see that this g7 pawn is the defender. Without that, rook h6 mates. So white thought of the move rook g7, but then g8 rook takes on g7, and rook h6 check, king goes to g8. So rook g7 doesn't work. So after qh7, kh7, next he thought of knight g7. Again same, g8 rook takes on g7. After rook h6, king has place on g8. He went to the candidate queen h7, kh7, bishop into h6, directly attacking the h6 pawn, removing the defender, and threat is bg7 checkmate. Rook is getting opened, no time for doing other things, like let's see qh7, kh7, bh6, rook gf8, then bishop g7, discovered check. King has to go to g8, and then rook h8 mate, since the bishop is guarded by knight and rook both. So it's a mate. Let's quickly play and see that line. Queen h7, kh7, bishop into h6, very strong move. Rook f8, bishop takes g7 check. Indirectly, he wants to open the h file directly and attack the h8 square. So after kg8, rook h8 mates. And if we keep this position here, many people will find the rest of the answer very easily, I think. After g into h6, which is forced, white uses the combination based on the idea of back rank, but he is using the h file as a back rank, because knight guards these two squares and the pawn guards g6. So after gh6, the forced move rook h6 check, forcing king into h6, and when rook h3 is made. So see, gh, rook h6 check, forced king h6, and rook h3 mate. Okay, so all the squares are guarded and nothing can interpose here. So this is the problem of having all the defenders close to each other. The pieces come in each other's path, and although there are many defenders, they may not be actually that useful. Okay, so I hope you are finding these lessons very useful. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.